the reason that we have this text analysis checklist is because remember when we were looking at the way that we go about creating a text analysis, right? We start off by looking, like, actually reading the text as if it is like we're reading it the first time. Okay, we start off with that, but we can't end there. And so we have to do our stream of consciousness writing. We need to read through our stream of consciousness. And now we need to take our ideas and deepen them. Okay. So then we spoke about the GASP and the CLIXPO framework. Now, these questions that I've got here are GASP and CLIXPO. They are the frameworks, but in question form. Okay. And so you can use this and answer these questions in your head or in text. If you actually do this with 3 or 4 texts, you'll see that your understanding, your base understanding of text goes far, far deeper. And you'll be able to apply it across the board. And then you'll be able to understand, when you're doing comparative analysis, you'll be able to understand both texts a lot more deeply. Okay? Does that make sense? So we start off with our context and pragmatics. And our context and pragmatics, who wants to take a guess at what context and pragmatics are? Yeah, I agree. Context would be where it was written, the world it was written in, who it was written for. That would fall into your context. And the reason that it's coupled with pragmatic is because pragmatics is the way that it is communicated, the way that it is understood. Because a different context, someone from a different context would understand something differently. So if I come from a context where there is a lot of snow, and I talk about, this is something that we actually looked at when we were when I was doing Bible translation. We were looking at, if I am in a culture where there is a lot of snow, it makes sense to say your sins are as white as snow, or your heart is as white as snow. Okay. However, if I'm speaking in a context where there is no snow, they've never seen snow, then what would be the representation of snow? What would carry that same idea? And that is what we mean by the context in pragmatics, because our context defines the meaning. Okay. So let's put it this way: in the 20s, okay, the F slur, that 3-letter F slur, was referring to a cigarette. Okay. Then later it started to be used as a weapon against gay people. Now today, it is still used as a weapon against gay people, but to a degree it has been reclaimed, and so you might find some gay people use the word in almost like a I'm powerful type of way, like you can't hurt me type. You know what I mean? So there's that. So then we look at, so here we're looking at what is a genre of it. So when we're talking about genre, we're looking at, okay, what is the base understanding of, like, is this a romantic novel? Is it a romance or is it a romantic novel? What is the genre of the text? So let's take a moment. Let's take our text that we've got, and we're going to ask ourselves a question of what is the genre of the text. Okay, so I need 3 opinions. There are 3 of you in the class, so I need 3 answers. It could be the same answer of what is the genre of the piece. Do you think it's either satirical or non-fic? Okay, so non-fic is a very, very broad range. Non-fic is literally, so if I take something and I say, okay, there are two types of writing. You've got fictional writing and non-fictional writing. Okay, so there's humor. I like that. That's very good. And where was it? Where did we find this piece? It was on a website. It doesn't quite have the feel of a blog post. I would say it's a humorous. Very important to include that it's humorous, and I would say that it's a humorous editorial or opinion piece. Okay, because editorials usually have some kind of opinion, right? Now, our next question asks, let's go look for our next question. Who is presenting or the author of the text? Okay. So who is that? Yeah, who is Klosterman? And so why would you say that why do you think that might be relevant? Yeah, and I think also it defines for us what the context is. For instance, if I'm reading something on Tumblr and it was written by a 13-year-old, I'm going to read it with a totally different understanding to what I would read something to how I would read something if it was written by Charles Dickens. There is a different feel to it. There is a different way of interpreting it. There is a different context that each of them has. And so the author plays a role in the context. The context in pragmatics is impacted by the author. And so, yeah, there are a couple of socio-political things we can look at there, socio-economic things. We don't have to look too deeply into it. I just like to I keep an eye out for these. That's all I want here. Now, here's where people get stuck. Who is the intended audience? Yeah, I think fans, but also just like anyone who's generally familiar with it. So it's not going to be relevant to someone who doesn't know what Pepsi or what the Pepsi company, what PepsiCo is. It's not going to be relevant to someone on like a little island that's never seen soda in their life. But the general public, just general people, I would say, would be able to understand and connect with this people. And particularly those who are familiar with Mountain Dew, right? So let me just think. I used to, when I was a kid, I really loved Mountain Dew, not because I actually liked it, but because my mother said it was her favorite. And so it was then my favorite, but it really wasn't. Pepsi is my favorite. Pepsi is my absolute favorite. I do not like Coke much, but I love Pepsi. And there was a stage that my mother used to import Pepsi Twist. It was amazing. It was like lemony Pepsi. And I also really love vanilla Pepsi. I really like it. Now, for someone who doesn't even know what Mountain Dew is, that's not relevant. Like my daughter doesn't know what Mountain Dew is, so she's not really going to know how to interact with this, right? So now our next question is, do you fall into the intended audience? So from there, I want to know, is there, if you look at the actual audience and the intended audience, so the actual audience in this case is you, the intended audience is the general public. Is there a difference between the intended audience and the general audience, and the intended audience and the actual audience? No. So how would it look if there was a difference? Can you give me an example? What is the how would it look if there was a difference? Yeah, I think there would be a lot more specific. Let me give you an example. Okay. Trump, his inauguration speech. Did you ever read it? You might have read it with me. Okay, or even Nelson Mandela's inauguration speech. Have you read that one? I know you guys have all done that. Who was the intended? It was broadcasted, yes. So it was South Africans in general, but was it South Africans of 2024 or was it South Africans of 1990? And they might have looked forward a little bit to it might go far further, but the reality is that the intended audience was them. And so, yes, we fall into some of the category of being South African, but we don't necessarily fall into the category of being in 1994. I mean, I was a whole 2 months old. And so there's that. So that is where we would look at, is there a difference between the actual and intended readers? Now, can I today go look at Nelson Mandela's speech and fully comprehend it? I think to a degree I can, due to education and all kinds of things. But what if I had not been taught about apartheid? What if I had not known about the atrocities of both sides? What if I had not known about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission? How would that impact my understanding of the text? And so here, our understanding of history plays a very big role in being able to be that intended audience. Does that make sense? Okay. So when I told you to read it, I said read it as if you are the audience, you are the target audience. So our next question we have, is there a difference between the actual reader and the intended reader? We did that one. What is the subject of the text? So when I say subject, what do we mean? Yeah, it's what is the text about? So like it's the main idea being discussed in the text. So that is where you do need to be careful. If you say the subject of the text is light bulbs, but light bulbs were mentioned as a throwaway comment in the third paragraph on the third line, then that's not the subject. Your subject is very, very specific, and the reason your subject is important is because your subject defines the purpose. Your subject defines where it's going, and when you're analyzing, you're looking at, okay, how do these things work together? Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so what is the subject of this text then? Can you say that again? Okay, so it's not so much about the lawsuits, but it's about the alleged ability of Mountain Dew to dissolve rodents. And then the author then goes on to talk about how they kind of defend their excessive Mountain Dew consumption. And so it kind of feels like they kind of want to geek out, or not geek out so much, but like talk about that, the fact that it's just allegations. They're still going to love their Mountain Dew, right? So our next thing that we've got is, does the reader need to have a specific frame of reference to understand the text? Okay. So does the reader need to have a specific frame of reference to understand the text? I think we spoke about that earlier. I think in order to understand the text, you just need to really know what Mountain Dew is. And you need to probably have some knowledge of the lawsuit that's referenced, but that knowledge of the lawsuit would really just enhance your understanding. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite. You know what I mean? Okay. So then from there, we look at our purpose. So from all of that, okay, we can look at what is the purpose of the text, and what strategies does the author employ to achieve this purpose. And that's where it gets a little bit more challenging. This is like an application. This is everything else was like grammar level. So we've got 3 levels. We've got grammar, logic, rhetoric. So everything else was like grammar level. And we don't actually need to constantly explicitly state the grammar level. But this is where the real work comes in, where we're looking at what is the real purpose of the text. And then we look at, we can at this point see, okay, what strategies is the author using so that this purpose can be achieved? Because in doing that, you're, number one, proving that you understand the purpose. You are proving that your belief in what that purpose is true, is correct. Okay? And so I'm not going to go through the answers of these last 4 because I actually want you to do these on your own. And then our next one is, what is the historical and cultural context in which the text was produced? So we look at this text, what is the context? Go look back at what was happening in the world then. This is not something you can really do in an exam, but in our study, it really does add to our study. Then we look at, are there cultural references that require any specific knowledge? So is there anything that requires a very, very specific understanding of something? And lastly, how might the text be interpreted differently across cultures or time periods? So 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 10 years ago, today, how could it be interpreted differently? And so I want you to be thinking about those things. I just quickly want to get, so I'm going to give you a quick essay question and I'm going to send you a link to it. And then I would like to mark that on Monday. So I'd like to give you feedback on that on Monday. We're basically just looking at context and pragmatics, and this analyze how the author of the text employs language, form, and structure to create a humorous, satirical take on the alleged ability of Mountain Dew to resolve math. In your analysis, concentrate specifically on the contextual and pragmatic elements that contribute to the comedy and overall effect. This is actually how, in AQA, this is how questions are asked. I actually quite like it. So then I've also got some areas that you can consider. How does a text genre as an opinion or editorial piece shape its context and pragmatics? What expectations does the genre set up? So I've basically created the outline, and I want you to use this outline to write your essay. Okay. Your outline is in the form of some questions, like some curiosity questions, things to think about. Okay. Okay, so I've got the work below, and you can just go check it out, and complete it for me, fill it out, and submit it.